What's up, guys? All right. My name is Emil, and I'm going to perform a clinic for you guys. Anyways, ask all the questions that you want. The more questions you ask, the easier it is for me. And, you know, there's no real topic here. But, yeah, so do this. This is a song called Black Licorice off of a self-titled record called Verlorner. And this is probably the second time I've played it live ever. So anyways, here we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a song that I wrote. It's not like VH1 Storytellers or something. There wasn't like any, oh, I wrote this folk song. Like, it was an arduous pain in the ass to write that record, but it was cool. It was I wanted to kind of break off and do my own thing. Well, I didn't want to. I had to break off and do my own thing because I felt like I kind of had more to say than just, you know, metal and stuff like that, which is not really much of I don't have a problem with metal. It's just that I think that there's not a lot of players out there that can do something that hasn't really been done, or they don't really have the, and rightfully so, they don't have the, let's call it, it's hard to market something new. That's why most people die before it becomes a trend kind of thing. You know what I mean? Anyway, so that's off a record called Verlorner. It's a self-titled record that came out in January, February, March, April. Came out in April. So, and there should be some live shows coming up around January that is pretty exciting. So that's basically what I'm pretty much going to be doing at this point forward until, like, I don't know, some huge country artist calls me or something like that. But anyway, so the more questions you guys have, the more fun this will be, because there's not really much of a topic. So any questions you may have about gear, my approach to playing, which is what I'm going to naturally talk about that anyways. And we're going to talk a lot about music theory, gear, theory, and stuff like that. So anyways, I'm going to do a little bit of playing real quick, and then we'll just go ahead and get started with the questions, if that's cool. I'm going to just sort of do like some chord melody stuff in A minor. All right. So this is what I do when I sit around the house pretty much, is I'm going to be doing stuff like this. So. Something like that. All right. So, anyways, any questions about anything in particular? What you got?
How do you build such an eclectic style of playing, man? Like, if I can describe your style of playing, it's like death grips on guitar.
I love death grips. Yeah, yeah.
The only way I can describe it, because it's so weird and out there. Like, how do you even come about that?
Oh, there you go.
Hey, there you go. How do you even come up, like, just coming up with such weird and eclectic way of like phrasing and playing that you're one of the few players that when I hear play, it's like, oh, that's Emil. Like, how do you manage to develop that?
This is gonna be kind of a weird answer. I don't really like guitar very much. I don't really like it in music. I don't like the culture of it. I mean, there's too many players. Let me rephrase that. There's too many players that are doing what everybody else is doing or saying what everybody else is saying, and they don't really have much of their own thing to say, and rightfully so. It's kind of like, and not to bag on vintage 30s, because I love vintage 30s as a speaker, I do. But a lot of times, have we ever experimented with something else that somebody else didn't play? So, like, is that the best speaker? Have you tried other ones? Have you gone through the trouble of try? That's the way I look at music. And, you know, I am, I guess you could call it, educated musician, but the strangest thing is what it did was it showed me what I don't like. It didn't show me, I mean, and I'm not in a negative way, but I've never really encountered a schooled person that knew exactly what they were doing, that just had that thing that you're talking about. And I've been playing for such a long time, probably more hours than most people. I didn't start playing until I was like 11, but at that point it was like everything stopped. I haven't played a video game since. I don't watch like shows. You know what I'm saying? I don't really keep up with anything. This is all I do. I breathe it. But I think as far as like my style, I was really attracted to Django. We talked about Gypsy jazz earlier, and the guys that kind of came after him, like Jimmy Rosenberg, Stockolo Rosenberg, guys like that. That style of playing is so old that when you hear it, you're kind of like, it just makes you really curious. And also, I found that people that don't play, when you let that music play, they like it and they get curious. And that's one of the only forms of guitar music that I find that non-guitar players like, or that doesn't bother them. They go, "What is this?" You know. which is why, I mean, we all grew up on Passion and Warfare, right? Like, I mean, that's the big one, you know, Perpetual Burn. We all grew up on that. But I felt like all those guys already said and did all that. Like, why would I try to do what Steve Vai's doing when Steve Vai exists? You know, he's like the best at that. You know what I mean? So for me, I knew that when it was kind of time, I gave up on being in like a band, a touring band, and I was like just making a living doing music, you know, in my early 20s. And then when Dååth got signed, I was like, okay, I already kind of was developed as a musician, like fully developed. So I knew that if this was going to happen and I was going to throw away my job to go jump in a van and smell smelly dudes all day and play shows, I knew that I wanted to really do something different, even if it was the hard road. And it is the hard road. If you do something that's original, it's the hard road, because it's not marketable. I mean, that music right there, it's weird. People don't really know. I mean, it'd be a lot easier if you could call that heavy metal. It'd be a lot easier if you can call that, like, I don't know, whatever genres on iTunes. I think the closest to it was like electronica, you know, or like, you know, there's all these weird little, you know, genres that they call stuff. But I mean, it's there for a reason. It's not a bad thing. So that's kind of the challenge that I have with this, is showing people that it's in the next one's going to be even weirder, I guess, if you could want to use that word. It's going to be even more down that path. But my two favorite things were like Depeche Mode and Django Reinhardt, because of Martin Gore's songwriting and because of Django's playing and his chord prowess. So everything that you hear in that music and everything that you hear me do is what I do, and I've intentionally stayed away from popular players and who's doing what, how many strings are on a guitar. Like, you know, I kind of got that out of my system because, like I said, by the time my band got signed, I was already fully developed. I knew that I was a two-band guy. You know, I knew I liked hollow bodies. You know, these things like that. But also, I'm kind of stubborn, and I knew how to go with my gut, right? So it definitely wasn't easy writing this kind of stuff. It's not the easiest soloing over music, but the one thing that did happen was the Dååth stuff was so diminished that one of the only options for me to play over it freely, it just so happened, it was like meant to be. All the stuff I worked on with the Gypsy Jazz translated really well to metal and death metal. So that's really kind of like how I came about it, you know. And it's really cool because it seems that the people that respond to it are more deep listeners. I call the regular casual listener like a pedestrian. You don't find a lot of those people liking my playing. Usually the people that like my playing or go, hey, you know, wow, I really like your playing. You sound like Borelli. I've had people in France tell me that. Borelli, I'm like, yay, I'll take that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like, I think that when I made the sacrifice to go on the road and just do the thing, it wound up being like, you know, I'm going to do this the way I want to do it. I'd rather have respect for my peers than respect from everybody. What comes with that, though, is it's kind of a hard road. But at the same time, you know, like I said, I respect my peers, and at this point, most of my peers are my friends now. And they're like, what you're doing is badass, keep going. And that's worth more than $1 million, like, sign this, you know, go play whatever festival, you know. I like your band, I like your t-shirt or whatever. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with what I listen to as well. I don't listen to guitar music. I don't like guitar music. I don't have anything against it. If I hear it, I hear the good in it. I'm like, this is awesome. But what I usually listen to is more experimental music. Like you mentioned Death Grips earlier. I love Death Grips. Like I love Bjork. You know, I was listening to MIA before I came here. You know, she's got some really cool stuff, and I like a lot of stuff that I like songs really. So a lot of times, people are kind of surprised when I sort of show them that I listen to different genres of music. And it's not like, most people that tour metal bands are always like, oh, I hate listening to metal. That's all they listen to. I really don't listen to metal, you could probably tell. You know, I have nothing against it. It's just I gravitate towards weird shit. You know, I mean, that's really what it is, you know. So that's pretty much it. You know, I'm out here to be unique no matter how hard it is, because I feel like I don't really have anything to prove to anybody but myself. I'm one of those guys, and that's pretty much it. So, you know, stuff like this, sounds like this. When you hear me play stuff like that, that's actually not that odd. That's a whole tone. That's a whole tone scale. And that is the exact corresponding chord, key term everybody, corresponding chord, but we're about to go there. That was the corresponding arpeggio or scale to this chord, which is a dominant 7. It's an altered chord. It's a dominant 7 sharp 5. And it's very gospel sounding. You'll find that in Babyface recordings. You'll find that like if I resolve it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Instead of this, how about this? So what I'm doing, and this actually kind of goes right back to your question, is how do I come up with these ideas? It's literally the one thing that I found with playing that supersedes technique. It totally supersedes everything to me, and it's just playing the changes like a jazz guy. That's all I'm doing. And because you break down the music that way, it's harder to do. It's less rewarding on the front end. But on the back end, you start hearing things from people like, that really fits, or that doesn't fit at all. Tension and release, right? Why is Hotel California the best solo ever? It's not because of the solo. The solo really doesn't matter. It's what they're playing over. That's one of the best songs ever written. Why are Kirk Hammett's solos some of the best solos ever written? It's not because of what he's playing. It's because he's playing with the best songwriter of our generation. By the way, if you guys didn't know, Metallica's the Beatles of our generation. You know, I mean, it's seriously. And I didn't grow up on Metallica, but that band is gigantic. You know what I'm saying? And Hetfield writes amazing songs. So when you have amazing songs that already exist, you can get like a kazoo player to play a solo, and it's going to sound badass, right? So back to playing chord changes. If I play a chord progression like the blues, just a regular 12 bar. Let's speed it up a little bit. Turn around. So I'm taking that, and instead of like the dad thing to do is just start like, you know, that's a dad thing to do. Like, and you'll notice that when you hear that kind of playing, you all may kind of notice that you're like, oh, and you're looking at your phone now, and now you're like, is the bar back there? I've already kind of heard it. You know, you're like, even if a person sounds good, it kind of loses you if there's not like a melody, if there's not some sort of chord change playing happening, right? So I noticed that early on because I was playing, where I come from, you have to learn all styles because you don't know what kind of gig you're going to get. From Alabama, there is no huge band that's going to like pull up and be like, I want you to play guitar for me. It doesn't work like that. Usually it's like, hey, there's a country guy that can actually play. He needs a guitarist. Can you go sit in, right? So I never discriminated with music. You know, naturally I was a metal player growing up because I walk fast and talk fast. But back to playing changes, I think that's pretty much the cornerstone of what I work on. It's my barometer, if you will. So if I'm to play over, if I look at that 12-bar blues right there, my only goal is to play single notes through those chords so you guys hear those chord changes. And it's going to sound something probably like this. There's the 4 chord. Here's the 1 again. Here's the turnaround. Here's the 4 again. You see what I'm doing here? Like I'm literally, and if I want to do triads, you're supposed to be able to hear the chords in everything that I do. And so when I play over something like a minor, let's do a minor blues now. Here's A minor. Here's D minor. Here's E7. That's a typical minor blues. You know what I'm talking about. It's like the Gypsy jazz anthem, right? So it's like, now I'm playing A minor arpeggio. Here's D minor arpeggio. There's a 5. pretty much what I'm going to be working on during the day constantly. And that's sort of a simplified, and I don't mean simple like that's really easy. That's simplified as in those are progressions that we know. We've heard those. You've heard Black Magic Woman. You've heard whatever blues tune. And to me, what I've found is that instead of being like, I want to listen to Suffocation, I don't like blues, I didn't have a choice. So instead of being like, this sucks, this is what my grandpa listens to, I embraced it. And I was like, if I can look at everything I do with metal and simplify it down to something like a 12-bar blues, and I look at that as a parallel to how I treat my own music when I write it, then that's going to be more of a sure bet that somebody understands it, because everybody knows there's a red house over yonder. That's where my baby stays. You know, I ain't seen my baby for 99.5 days. I mean, we've all heard that. So should we be like, I don't want to hear that? Or should we be like, wait a minute, I can learn from that because it works? So that's kind of that in a nutshell. That's what I work on. That's how I came up with what I do. And really and truly what I'm doing is nothing unique. It's just taking something from the 30s and the 40s and sticking it right on top of something like heavy metal or whatever else I'm doing, if that makes sense. Right? Any more questions?
Hey, Emil, we got the, excuse me, guys, I lost my voice. I'm the worst guy to be doing this, but we've got some online folks here. First question that we had was, who's your favorite artist?
I can give a list because my favorite artist, it's kind of a long revolving list because there's artists from old like Django, and then there's newer generations of Django like Stockolo Rosenberg, a newer guy is Josko Stefan, Borelli Lagreen. Like all these guys have really deep history, but that's just one genre that I like. I mean, there's an electronic artist named Clark that's got some great ideas. Like we just talked about Death Grips earlier. I like Death Grips a lot because it's just like it's like the closest thing to real punk rock you can get, especially like when it all came out, like during that Pitchfork era. It was hilarious. It was like, what in the world is this? Did it take them 10 years to do this or like 5 minutes? I don't know. Maybe the latter. There's no telling, Plus, I mean, Zach Hill, he's a badass. So, but anyways, it's a hard question for me to pin down because I listen to music, I enjoy it, but I listen to it for reference. So if I gave you if I gave somebody a textbook, and you read that textbook, most people would read it front to back if it was like a guitar method or something. I don't really do that. I never have. I kind of look at stuff and go, okay, I want to learn this, and then I go seek that out because I don't know if it's a learning disability. It probably is, but because of that. It's made me capable of blocking out all the noise and the stuff that you would normally waste your time on. So for example, like if I see somebody playing a crazy country lick, I'm gonna go, oh, that's awesome. And they show it to me, I'm like, cool, but I'm probably not gonna learn it because I know that I haven't been playing country since I was that big. I know at this point like what I'm going after, but usually that style collides with the stuff that I do. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll find my own way to play stuff. So a lot of cliche licks come from a source, and I take them and kind of screw around with them. And I take things that are recognizable, and I'll end on a wrong note. And that works for me. So a lot of that comes from reference, I guess. So metal, I grew up on Pantera. Let's see, I was a big Marty Friedman guy. That's in my playing. Dimebag's in my playing. But here's the thing, though. Where I really came from is there's a guy named Bobby Coble that played on Symbolic by Death. That's like, if you listen to it, that's the closest you can hear of like who I'm ripping off. He's the guy that's like, he's doing like bebop licks over I heard that and Paul Masvidal from Cynic. Then later I got on Meshuggah. You catch the drift. Everybody, I mean, Meshuggah, Cynic, Death, that all comes, it's like, okay, all right. So yeah, I did my time with that stuff. Symbolic's my favorite Death record, aside from Human. But that's metal. Jazz, Pat Martino, one of my favorite guitar players is George Benson for sure. Many, many hours just shaking my head going, how the hell is he doing that? Because everybody always goes like, Benson plays guitar? I'm like, are you out of your mind? He's the best guitar player that ever walked this planet. I mean, he's like the ultimate technician, and he's been sweeping and stuff since the 70s. I mean, you know what I mean? So, and then I always went backwards, just like reference material. I look at a book, I go backwards. I pick and choose what I like because I know what I want, and that's one thing I think a lot of people don't really have on their side is they're too indecisive because they're too easily influenced by others' hey, vintage 30 is the best. Okay, cool, sounds good. I like vintage 30s now. And I don't know why I'm using it as an example, because that is my favorite speaker, vintage 30. It works for me, you know, because I've toured on vintage 30s. I've had sound guys be like, that cabinet sounds like shit, what's in there? And I'm like, not a vintage 30. They're like, yeah, you need to just find just, you know, a straight cab of 30s. So does this all make sense to you guys? Like, that's kind of like, that sort of comes back to your question about how did you come up with all this garbage? You didn't phrase it like that, but that's those are my favorite artists. My favorite guitar player of all time is Jimmy Rosenberg, for sure. That's like my favorite guy. Yeah, a great story. Yeah, real tragic story, but he's great. I learned a lot of my songwriting chops from Depeche Mode. There's no telling how many hours I've clocked in with Depeche Mode. Violator is a great record. Songs of Faith and Devotion is one of my favorites. These are things that a lot of people, like, you would recognize their songs, but you wouldn't be, you know, it's like, they're like the dark hat wearing pop act. They've sold millions of records. You don't think you know any of their songs, and you hear it on the radio, you know exactly who it is. David Gahan's voice is, you can't miss it. You know, Martin Gore's like guitar parts and harmonies and melodies, their post-chorus melodies are the dopest. Like, you just can't miss it, you know? So, I mean, that's pretty much it. Every genre I kind of have. My favorite country guitar player is probably going to be, well, I mean, obviously, living guitar player, you got Brett Mason. That's the king. Danny Gatton. You know, my favorite neighborly guitar player is Guthrie Trapp, lives in Nashville. Guthrie Trapp's like the most complete guitarist ever. The guy, I think the greatest of all time right now is Jimmy Herring. And he's really cool. And he has definitely like been super kind to me, just with even like giving me his time, you know, because we share the same bassist. Kevin Scott is from Dothan, Alabama, like I am, and he plays bass for Jimmy Herring. And you know, so Jimmy's a lot of these ideas. A lot of the ideas that I'm playing, all the weird kind of like half-whole stuff that I tried, a lot of that is like Jimmy stuff mixed with a little bit of Django stuff. For example, like Jimmy will do stuff like this. If you're playing over a dominant chord, let's get technical here. If you're playing over a dominant chord, you can play, like what Django will do is he'll play off the major third. So if I play a diminished off the major third, it's going to sound like this. Here's what a dominant arpeggio sounds like. Here's what it sounds like diminished. Why does that work? Well, dominant arpeggio is, if I start on the flat 7, 1, 3, 5, I can take this up in octaves. Like Paul Gilbert, we can just repeat it, right? But I'm doing that horizontally so I can see what's happening intervallically, big words. And then if I do diminish off the major third, look how close this is. Dominant. It's the exact same thing as a dominant arpeggio, but it's got a flat 9 instead of a root. So what Jimmy does, one of the many things that he does is he's going to take and play off the tritone. So if you play something like this, like an A7, believe it or not, this is the same chord. A dominant chord, a tritone up is the same chord. It's called a tritone sub. Why? Well, when I look at this right here, I see the tritone, which is the third and the flat 7. The third and the 7th is the primary chord tone and the secondary chord tone. You don't need the 7th. This is a triad. That's inside of the chord. A triad is 1, 3, 5. So when I play a triad, that's like Mary Had a Little Lamb. That's literally Mary Had a Little Lamb, right? But the good thing about that is that you can kind of put more stuff over it. So if I'm playing a major chord, I can play dominant over major, like a major triad. So back to the tritone sub thing, the 3 and the flat 7 create a tritone, like an ambulance, or whatever, Purple Haze or whatever. That's a tritone. That's the sound of the Beatles. It's a dominant sound. That's the blues sound. Now, if I go up a tritone and I play E flat 7, look at this. It's flip-flopped. We have the major third, and we have the flat 7. So if I play A7, I have the tritone is the flat 7 and the major third. If I play a tritone up, it's the third and the major 6 flip-flopped. So here's what it sounds like with arpeggios. If I'm jamming over this, so you can hear that sound. And it doesn't really sound too crazy. If you play with conviction, it sounds quite just interesting, right? But what Jimmy will do is he'll kind of take those two things and shuffle the deck and go back between both of them. This is my take on Jimmy's playing. So he'll do stuff more like. That's also a Benson lick. That's an altered sound. Really and truly, the definition of music is tension and release. For something to be really pretty, it needs to be ugly before it gets pretty, right? If I just play this chord, if I play even back to this chord, if I play that and start on that and end on that, you're gonna be like, that sounds bad. But if I go, now the pretty sounds prettier because we put something ugly before it. And what a lot of jazz guys do is they're gonna go and play ugly. They're gonna get uglier, and then they're gonna finally resolve like that. And that's you're controlling tension and release, and that's kind of that's like getting to the punch pretty much. Like tension and release, if that's the definition of music, then we should all probably be better at tension and release, right? But you'd be surprised at how many guitar players don't even know what a dominant chord is. That's not bad, because some of my favorite guitar players don't give a damn about dominant chords. Most of my favorite guitar players don't even know what a dominant chord is, but they play them. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure Stevie Ray Vaughan knows what a dominant chord is, but he's probably not like, hey, let's play that dominant sharp 11 altered thing. But he already does that. You know what I'm saying? There's a million songs where he's like, just getting nasty with it. So it's just one of those things, Let's see. And when you do it, here's what the arpeggios sound like once again. Back to this. I'm going to sit around on the couch all day and try to find out how to outline that in time with arpeggios or scales or anything that I kind of that I hear in my head. And if I have something like this, how about this? One more time. That's pretty much what I'm doing constantly, And I'm not playing scales. I'm decorating with scales. I'm decorating with altered tones, but I'm throwing them over arpeggios. Why? Because of the interchangeability. So back to the blues. If I'm playing over an A7, there's the A7 arpeggio. If it goes to D, it also goes to D with the exact same arpeggio. Oh, here's the E7. Here's turn around. Now here's the. That's what I'm doing. That's the basic form. You can't take shapes and move them around, though, because then guys like us will go back to the bar and forget about watching the guitarist. We're like, this guy's just moving shapes around. You have to decorate them with things. Like, for example, here's what all the guys I'm talking about are like. I think they're musical bandits. That's why I like them. Jimmy Herring, Django, Benson. They're going to do stuff like this. There's this arpeggio once again. Even if I take an arpeggio like this. There's a D major arpeggio. I can play the root note. I can go a half step below it, half step above it, and then play the root note. That follows suit on that. So when a rocker plays an arpeggio, we think that's a sweep. It's gone. Like, there's so much more cool stuff you can do with that. Well, I mean, that's kind of why I do it the way that I do it, because an arpeggio is like a tool. It's like a piece of, it's like a word in a sentence. So when I say major, I can take that major, instead of making it sound like I can D Mary had a little lamb it. I can be like. So that right there, that fits over. That right there is an idea over A major. So anytime I see an A major chord, I can just do that all over the neck, and that's kind of what I'm doing, and that's what I'm after, because that's more of a Django Reinhardt thing, because he had two fingers, So, anyways, any more questions here or from the intranets?
Yes, we do have questions. What do we have out there? All right, we'll do the outside, then we'll come back to the internet.
Do you want to go ahead? You get the microphone? Get your own mic. Look at that.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hola.
All right. It's more like of an industry question.
Yeah, please.
What's your take on like guitar music nowadays? Because do you think it's getting popular like how it was in the 80s? And I'm asking you from being in the music industry and more guitar oriented. part of the industry.
Yeah.
Like metal. What's your take on that? Because it's getting popular more so nowadays with bands like Polyphia and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Gear culture. It is more popular than ever. You'll see trend when you're old as hell like I am. You see trends. Like I remember back when it was the Triaxis and not the Axifex. I remember when it was Line 6 Pod and not the AX8. You know what I'm saying? And I understand. Things get better with time. I understand. But the music is the same way. It's super popular right now. I mean, like, these memes, you can see like a starter pack for guitar players these days. I thought that was hilarious. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much it. This is just me analyzing. I'm not against it, but yeah, it's more popular than ever because companies now are more powerful. Gear companies are more powerful than record labels. A record label didn't put me in front of you guys today. PRS Guitars did. So that right there that paints a huge picture. It's a positive thing. But also, a guy like me will roll his eyes a little bit because it's like, once again, that statement about thinking for yourself and doing your own thing. And I can't complain because, yeah, y'all go copy each other. I'm going to be over here doing my own thing. You know what I'm saying? There's a quicker reward on the front end. Do you guys understand what I mean by that? You can get in the band and get on the road and have the accolades immediately, but who do you know that wins on the back end? You know who wins on the back end? People in their 40s and 50s that invent something, that suffer on the front end. What's that? Delayed gratification. Yeah, I like that. Delayed gratification. Yeah, so I think it's more popular than ever. I think it's just like the 80s right now with hair metal. Everybody plays guitar. When I was growing up, nobody could sweep except for me. And if I found a dude that can sweep and tap at the same time, I gotta know, where's he at? I gotta meet him, I gotta talk to this guy, see what he's got, Now, if you can't do that, you're worthless, says Instagram. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm being a little silly when I say that, but I mean, part of me rolls my eyes when I just, the feed is just a kid sitting in front of the bed, sitting in front of his rig in his bed, and there's the computer screen with the 2 monitors behind him. It was like, maybe there's like not a headstock on the guitar or something. I don't really pay too much attention to that, but you kind of can't really ignore it. And the positive side, because this is not being negative at all, because to me, I'm too stuck in my own world and dealing with my own internal shit to really worry about what's hot and what's not. Obviously, you can tell by the way that I play, for better or for worse. But I think that it's very gear and gear culture is what is under the hood right now. And you can take that as a positive, I do, and you can take it as a negative. But I think that what I strive to do is I try to look at it and go, how can I be different? How can I stick out? Because I've seen players that are worse players than everybody, but they sound like themselves. And I would rather hear a guy or a girl, lady, whatever, man, cat, dog. I'd rather hear somebody that's a bad player that has their own thing going on than a great player that sounds like everybody else. And right now, in my opinion, I think right now there's not a lot of originality, unless you trace it back to the source. Like, newer style of play. Like Tosin Abasi is the guy. He's created something. You know what I'm saying? That's not really debatable. He's kind of the Steve Ive right now. Like, he made that sound, and there it is. And then after him, fortunately for his hard work and his creation of the thing that he's doing, now these kind of guitars are in, and that's a positive thing. Now people are doing that, and that right there is positive. It's influence. That's great, But let's see, other players. I can't really think of one right now, but I mean, even the gent stuff. Like, there's a point where, see, back in my day, it was the Gothenburg sound. At the Gates, In Flames. Those are. I was huge into those guys when I was a kid. But then for those bands, you have all the bands that trickle down. And you get a really watered-down version of Slaughter of the Soul. You get a really watered-down version of whatever In Flames record. I liked Horacle a lot. I thought that was a really cool record. This is a natural evolution. It's not really something that I'm complaining about. But it's something I can point out and say, if you go back to the source, like right now, anybody with an extended range instrument, they're going to, Tosin is at the top of that mountain. He kind of really made that stuff hip again. You know what I mean? So I think, to kind of get back on track, I think it's whichever way you want to take it. To me, I see what's in front of my face and go, I'm doing the exact opposite. That's just my nature. It's always been that way. It's a harder road, It may not be the right decision. I may wake up 10 years from now and go, damn it, I could have had it easy. But I highly doubt it, because trends evolve. And when I say trend, I don't mean that in a negative way. It takes a trend. Hopefully my music will inspire some people and it will be a trend one day, But until then, all I can really do is just kind of do everything I can to be myself and keep away from the influence of like, that's a great idea, I'm gonna do that. Usually I'm like, well, he did that idea, I'm gonna do the exact opposite. I'm an exact opposite guy because I'm just a stubborn asshole, you know what I mean? Anyways, does that kind of answer your question? Yeah. Very cool, very cool. Anybody on the floor before we go to internet, folks?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, let's do, here we go. Yeah, you get the mic now too.
Aside from Tosin and the obvious guys like I mentioned before, Wes Hawk, what are some guys that make you go, oh, what are you doing there? Like
Wes Hawk, Ryan Knight.
What about Nick Johnston? I think
Nick Johnston's a good player.
Yeah, I think he's amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, he's a real player, and he's a guitar player. You can't really call him you can't really particularly name a trend. You know what I'm saying? I think Andy Wood's incredible. I think Andy Wood and Justin D'Errico are the scariest technical players I've ever seen. If those two became one person, like everybody should just go ahead and quit, because they're pretty much like they have their own voice, technically speaking. And I say technical like they don't have soul or something. No, they got all the soul. They're legit. They have all the soul. They're legit. Like they have sacrificed their whole damn lives to play guitar, and you get to hear that when they play. Those guys just make me go. Those guys make me just want it. Those are guys that make me want to quit. I'm just like, oh God. It's like those days of practicing are gone for me. Now I just see it. I'm like, oh God, what the hell's wrong with that guy? Let's see, who else? Those are the guys, in my opinion. Guys that have sacrificed to do what they do. A guy that can go play with Garth Brooks, and then a guy that can turn around and go play with, like some metal band, and then a guy that can turn around and go up the street and play a jazz gig on a Sunday. That's the school that's where I come from. I got to pay this cell phone bill. That's where I come from. You know what I'm saying? I got to keep these lights on. I should probably have a place to sleep, huh? So when that's your priority, and not your main priority, because a lot of times that can lead you to say yes to things that you don't need to say yes to at a certain point. When you get out of college and stuff, you got to say yes to everything so you can justify the fact that you have student loan debt. But if that's the case, you're talking about music. I think that a lot of people should just pay more attention to music and not the gear culture, because all the guys that we just talked about, they can do it on an acoustic guitar. I've seen them. They can do it over a 145. They can do all of it. You know what else they can probably do? They can probably notate their shit. They can restring their guitars and intonate them. You know what I mean? It's a lifelong thing. And again, this is not a negative statement. I can tell when somebody has sacrificed their life for it. I could just look at them with it by the way they hold the guitar and be like, okay, this guy's serious. Like I totally can. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. Does that answer the question? Sometimes I get off. Yeah, I know you're good. Okay. Any on the floor before we go to internet land?
I was wondering if you play any other instrument, and if so, how does that help your guitar playing?
My original instrument's the piano.
Okay.
I can. I grew up with my brother was a drummer, and I could play drums really well at one point, and then there's one point where years passed, and I quit everything to focus on guitar. Like when I was younger, I literally was like, I don't know why, I'm not the brightest dude, especially at that time, but I definitely was like, I'm really good at this compared to all my friends, and I can tolerate this a lot more than art. I had an art scholarship when I was in high school to go to college, and I was like, psh, I want to pay for music school. Why do I want to get paid to go to art school? I'd rather just pay to go to music, Give me that student loan debt. I'm kidding. I don't have any of that, thank God. Let's see. Piano, drums, and that stuff took a back seat, and it all became guitar time when I realized that I needed every single bit of energy invested into what I'm going to do. At an early age, I knew this. I knew that I was screwed. I knew that this is a dumb idea, but I know I've never encountered somebody that didn't say wow when I played. Because a lot of times you don't believe your friends. Like, yeah, okay, or some parents need to tell their kids they suck every now and then. Sounds like shit, Johnny. You know what I'm saying? Like some parents need to just be like, you should probably practice, you know. But I come from a family where all we cared about was music. You know, my dad was like in the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and he showed me Birds of Fire when I was like 16, and I was like, damn, you know. And you know, that's why I like the Mars Volta. You know, because when that came around, I was like, whoa, sounds like Birds of Fire. Woo! All right, cool. You know, so piano, guitar, or it was piano and drums took a back seat for guitar, and where it came back out was I'm really good at programming drums. I know how they work. Usually when I demo the music I played earlier, when I demo stuff for other people to play over, they're usually going to hear my drums that I've just programmed, and I don't waste any time with drum packs and drum expansion kits and all. I'm kind of just not into that. If you saw the way that I write, you would laugh probably. If you saw my recording rig, you would truly be like, this guy's insane. You know, because I do come from a place where I think you should be able to sit down without a guitar and write a song, and I'm a guitarist. So that's kind of where piano and drums crept back in, but piano being my original instrument. I thought I could play it recently. I was like, I can play drums. And I sat down and was like, yeah, I can't play drums anymore. You know? And it was in front of people too. Anyways, any more questions?
Yeah, we got a couple of questions actually.
Let's do one on the internet real quick. What you got?
Yeah. KP Keaton was, actually, no, wrong guy. Zan was saying that he listened to Jimmy Rosenberg and appreciated you talking about him. But one of the questions is, if you could be praised for your sound by only one musician, who would it be? It doesn't matter, past, present, or future.
Well, obviously, if Jimmy Rosenberg said my music was great, I'd probably flip out a little bit, yeah.
Well, the same guy who asked that question, or said he was listening to Jimmy Rosenberg, asked that question, so.
Yeah, if Martin Gore was like, yeah, I've heard of Verloner, I'd flip out for a second, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Emerald Storm wanted to know about what you thought of playing guitar harp. Does that instrument interest you at all?
Guitar harp, is he live right now? Is that the thing where it's got the harp strings and the guitar? I know what it is. Oh, it's the gigantic thing with the whatchamacall and the thing above. It's a guitar that's got this thing that goes like this, and there's like harp strings too. So essentially, it's like a 20-string guitar. Am I right?
Yeah, Emerald Storm said that. She said yes.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I get fascinated with. Like, I tried to. You guys ever heard of Dennis Chang? Dennis Chang is like one of the best gypsy jazz educators. He's got like a school called DC Music School. Dennis Chang. I think he lives in Montreal, I believe. I actually hit him up because I wanted hammer dulcimer player for Verloner, because I would write parts, and there's some parts that I wanted to have a guitar quality but not be a guitar. So I'm very attracted to instruments like that. A lot of times I'll try to play those instruments, you know, and not even try to play them correctly. I'll just try to come up with a part that actually works. But then most times if I write a part that I want the sound of that instrument, I'll kind of like write the part on the piano roll and then find that musician and hire them, you know, that kind of thing. Okay. Him first.
I forgot it kind of. Shit.
Yeah, good. Your turn.
Did you just say your dad was in the Mahavishnu Orchestra?
No, that would be dope.
I was like,
yeah, his name's John McLaughlin.
Yeah, I was about to say what? I thought I misheard you.
No, he showed me.
Mahavishnu
Yeah, he showed me
Orchestra.
Mahavishnu.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I could have swore I misheard.
I should have rolled with that,
That would've been
because
awesome.
then people would be like, "This is like John McLaughlin's kid." I'm like, "What's up?" Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so some people struggle with writing songs for this album that you were doing. How did it go? Like, did you have a idea of the whole thing, song one, etc. is going to sound like this? Did you have a layout? Did you write the song first, then the solo? Did you do it at the same time? Did you build it off the solo idea? How did you do that? How did you
the chords came for the chord. Well, the need to not be jaded came first, because it was probably around the time that Chimaira was slowing down, and I left Chimaira, and it was like, I don't want to do this again. I've done it. I've already done it. I know I can do it. Like, I got to the top of that mountain, and I touched the ceiling. And at that point, the only people any higher than, you know, as far as like when you start seeing people you grew up listening to and they're opening for you, or you're opening for them, and you kind of see what's up with them, and you see it, you go, damn, this is it. Like, this is it. And instead of being like, hell yeah, this is it, let's go party, it was more like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not on this planet to go, you know, to play that style of, you know, I could go join a metal band tomorrow. There's been offers. But I'm on my own shit right now. You know what I'm saying? I needed this so that the need to not be jaded. And it's, if you play the same metal song for the same 500 to 1,200 people, every city across the country, shit gets old. You know, there's goodness there. You know, people know your music. They're singing it. They're yelling it back over the PA. There's nothing like that feeling. That's all. That's what it's all about, right? But the need to not be jaded. I found that I started not feeling good about what I was doing on stage. I found for the first time I felt like resistance, like I had to act like I was performing instead of just go out there and just let it all hang out. And one of my favorite things to do is to perform, like to be on a stage and just be doing my thing. So the ambition to do something different came first, and the way that it was written was literally, it started with chords on a couch, because I had with metal, it's like, let's come up with an idea. The next part's got to be bigger. The next part's got to be bigger. The next part's got to be bigger. The bridge is going to be like tiny with no drums, and it's going to come back and be the biggest part of the song. Does that sound familiar? Sounds about right. Not a bad thing. That's why we all love it. But that's what's happening there. Bigger, 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 bigger. I needed dynamics. I needed a situation that I could like just say my piece and not have to like compete, because in a sense, metal's kind of like a sport. It's kind of like shred guitar. He's tapping, he's slapping. You know what I mean? Like, here, oh, he's faster than the other guy. My God, look at that endurance. You know, it's like a NASCAR race or something, or monster truck rally. So it started out with chords, and all the gypsy jazz stuff that I worked on really kind of facilitated my need. My harmony got really good, because the whole time I was playing in metal bands, all I was doing was playing that. Because I'm the kind of guy, again, the exact opposite. If I have this one situation that's taken care of, and I'm touring in a metal band, and I'm happy there, and I'm performing every night, you know, this and that, then my mind is going to need something like gypsy jazz, or no, I'm going to go study Pat Martino, you know, that kind of thing. So writing left to right is a big one. But it always winds up not working, in a sense, because there's a lot of detail with this kind of idea. But back in the day, before Pro Tools, people were better writers. They were better performers. Sorry, that's how it is. Now they weren't more accurate. They were probably more accurate in person, but you can fix stuff like crazy now. You can just fix stuff. Oh no, I got it. What do you mean you got it? Oh, I already fixed it. Oh, cool. Now engineers are like, before you even say, do I need to do it again? It's fixed. I'll just move that note over. Think about that. Now, I take advantage of that shit. You better believe it. I'll knock out a solo in half an hour, you know, and be proud of it. Like, yeah, because I don't want to like, you know, give 4 hours of my hands, because that stuff, it'll deteriorate your hands when you play really extreme. But writing left to right is basically where if you sit on your couch and you play chords, and you can write a whole song with chords, then everything that you grow from that seed, every plant that you grow from that seed, is going to come out of the chords. And that's when people go, oh, Hotel California fits. That's a great solo. So so I would sit on the couch, and it started, like, here's one of the first progressions I wrote for the record. It's called Stained Glass. And then here's the B section. And then look at the root notes. That's the bass line. That's what made the record. There's B section. And then there's a bridge to it. And then when I play the solo over that, it's through those chords. Everything is through those chords, unless I don't want it to be. Because if you do too much of that, it's too much of that. Then you got to find another approach. But then, like, so it got to the point of where I would write a song very minimal. And I wouldn't let myself do the guitar culture things that I knew that we naturally want to do, because it's guitar culture, and that's what it's taught us. It's taught us, go ahead and program that drum beat. go ahead and let's put a solo on there. But the song's not done. You know, also that's another thing. Like people probably don't know this. I don't do any soloing until the song's done, unless it's like, you know, let's do a solo. Unless the song is like obvious as hell that this, and then what I'll do is I'll go slop something down so my time is not wasted, and so it's like a placeholder for this is a solo. Emil's going to solo here, because I mean, a lot of people will take and keep something because of the amount of time they put into it, and even if it sucks and it took them, if it takes me 8 hours to do something and somebody's like, nah, it's got to go, we're cutting, I'm gonna be like, why? Not because it's good, but because I spent 8 hours on it. So that was a lot of my mentality. But the be straightforward with the writing, it was guitar chords, drum beats that were bit crushed, and if I couldn't find the next part, or I wanted to give a part balls so I could see that it works, like a chorus idea, I just programmed synth bass, and then by the time the song was done, the instrumentation was pretty much like rhythm guitar, really sloppy, sparse melodies. And by the way, I recorded all the demos through a microcube through the record out. I don't let myself touch any software. I'm very, what's the word? I guess you can call it organic. I don't know. But and then lo and behold, some of that crap made it on the record. So there's like microcube tones on the record. You know, does that kind of help make sense?
Absolutely, Emil. We're getting to the top of the hour.
Oh.
And we've got about 2 dozen people online right now, plus everybody in house. Do you want to finish up with a song here?
Yeah. Let's do a song.
All right, thanks, Emil. Thanks, Pitbull Audio, guys.
Thank you, guys.
For hosting tonight.
Thank you, everybody on the old internet land there. All right, let's see. All right, let's get that Rick Astley cover. What's my password, guys? All right, this is a song called Gothic Architecture off of the Verona record. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Pitbull. It's got CDs for sale over here. If you guys want me to sign anything, I'll be over here. You guys are hanging out. I'm here. Thank you all very much for the questions.